Good morning and welcome to Sovereign and Strong, How to See Beauty in Chaos, Shift Your Consciousness, and Create Peace Within. I'm so glad you've joined us. I'm Caritha Yeager, your host, and today's speaker is the amazing Lynne Forrest. Lynne is an author and spiritual mentor. She uses ancient principles to help those who struggle to find their way back into alignment with themselves and their life purpose. Lynne has been educated through a lifetime of studying and observing metaphysical principles and she has found practical ways of applying those principles for immediate positive change. She started out in social work and in mental health in the early 70s and has been in the field of personal development ever since, moving to the addictions field in the early 80s after successfully transforming her own addictive lifestyle into a more creative and productive one. She is one of the pioneers for bringing codependency and family of origin work to Chattanooga, Tennessee. Lynne has devoted herself to studying with masters of various disciplines, including her mom, who was her very first teacher, a student of metaphysics who herself drew upon her inner knowing and intuitive wisdom for spiritual truths. So thank you, Lynne, so much for being here. We are so happy to have you.
Thank you, Caritha. That was a beautiful introduction. Thank you.
Yeah, of course. So I'm so happy that you're here because you have been working with people to help them transform their consciousness for decades. And we know that what people think about what they believe is really powerful. And you are an expert in what you call victim consciousness, which I think is super relevant for right now and what you're going through. So I would love to have you explain what victim consciousness is and maybe the three aspects that you see within that.
Mm-hmm. So yeah, victim consciousness, you mentioned I've been working with people for like 40 plus years, right? And this is like generations of families. I've gotten to watch how the defense strategies and what I call victim consciousness travels down from one generation to another. I've been able to actually witness and work with the family members, and now going to my fourth generation in some families. So it's an amazing thing to watch. What that gives me is some real live on the ground, uh, firsthand observation, witnessing of how powerful victim consciousness is. And what is victim consciousness? Well, it is not about whether or not you are victimized. There are lots of victims. There's victims of diseases, victims of traumatic events, of weather events, of not to mention what we do to one another and how we victimize one another. This is, yes, you can be a victim, but you do not, even as a victim, have to give yourself over to what I call victim consciousness. And victim consciousness is a state of consciousness that sees ourselves, that sees through a lens, that sees ourselves as that being at the mercy of what's happening or has happened to us. We see ourselves as powerless and at the mercy of. We feel hopeless and we go into a place of collapse. That's the place of victim consciousness, when we see ourselves as this is happening to me and I have nothing to say about it. There's nothing I can do. And then when we see ourselves as powerless, the next thing we begin to do is, or we see ourselves powerless in reference to blaming the outside world for being the cause of our unhappiness. And really, one of the big recognitions on this path is that of beginning to understand that I may not be in charge of what happens to me, but I am always in charge of how I see it and what I do with it. How I feel about it is up to me. And that determines my state of consciousness. That determines whether I come through it with flying colors, where I come through on top of it and richer for having gone through it, or I come out of it in collapse and in one of the three roles, really, that are designated on the drama triangle developed originally by Dr. Stephen Karpman, PhD of transactional analysis. That was, I ran into his work back in the 70s, early 70s, and began to recognize that downward facing triangle, the dynamics of victim consciousness in my own life and in the lives of others. And even at that point, I was working with people and seeing the dynamics being played out in their families, seeing it, well, in the world. Of course, we see it on every level. And really, it's the understanding that there are three roles that are played in victim consciousness. And these are defense strategies. These are, when we see because victim consciousness comes from the assumption that what is outside of me is the cause of my distress. And as soon as I believe that, I feel like I need to defend myself in some way. What am I going to do to protect myself? How am I going to survive in this world that I see as coming at me, and as of me being at the mercy of it? And so I'm going to choose one of the three strategies, and they are all three played out or shown, illustrated on that victim triangle. It's really like you can think of the victim as being the collapse place where we collapse, and then from there we either go persecutor or we go into rescuer. We either go into fight, victim is flight, and the third, which is a very popular one and really is about as evolved as we as a human race altogether have seemed to get, which is that place of I'm going to rescue those who are weaker than me as my way of protecting myself. I'm going to be the one who comes up against, not through attack, but through control, through people pleasing, through martyrdom, through the role of I'm going to take care of you. And in that way, I'll get my need for belonging, for purpose met. And that's the rescuer role. So yeah, those three form that triangle, and we have a starting gate role. That's the role that we tend to see the world through, the defense strategy through which we see the world. And each of those are different. The victim, the rescuer, the persecutor, all have ways of looking at the world. But what we choose as a starting gate doesn't mean we don't dance the whole triangle, because rescuers do triangle from a rescuer lens, through a rescuer core belief that says my needs aren't important, but yours are. And the way I can be important is to have you depend upon me. And so if I take care of you well enough, then you will give me what I need. And it's sort of this idea, but who we hook up with is, as rescuers, is victims. And people who see themselves as unable to take care of themselves. And we tend to attract that. And then we feel the need to hover over and control and fix them. And protect them from the bullies who now we bully. So, we've just moved to persecutor now as the rescuer. And then we persecute those we see as persecutors because we're justified. And the beat goes on. It just continues around that. Then they strike back from feeling victimized by us. They step back into the persecutor and punch us back. And then we feel in collapse and at the mercy of, after all we've done, this is the thanks we get. This is a rescuer moving around the triangle. And each one of those roles moves around in their own way. So I know I said a whole lot there. Tell me where that leaves you.
No, I mean, that was great, Lynn. So thank you. And so I just want to reiterate for the viewer. So there's three roles kind of within that victim consciousness, which is the persecutor, the rescuer, and the victim. And then we just, depending on what we're doing, we cycle between the three personally ourselves.
And we also take on one of those roles through which will become our major way of seeing the world. You might say that each one of those roles, if as a starting gate position, that's what I call it. When you see the world through the eyes of a persecutor, you see the world through the eyes of a rescuer or through the eyes of a victim. And each one of those is a bit of a different lens, which means you'll dance around the triangle in that unique way. And they're based on beliefs. The victim believes I can't take care of myself. I really am at the mercy of. I need somebody else to save me. That is a victim's core stance if you're a starting gate victim. If you're a starting gate persecutor, the core belief is that the world is dangerous and it's out to get me. And I'm going to have to protect myself and get you first before I get God. And so there is that need to strike out, thinking to a persecutor doesn't look like I'm striking out at all to me. From a persecutor point of view, I'm just protecting, I'm just defending. But you know, when you defend like this, what does that look like to the world? If not, you're getting ready to throw a punch. What does that invite? If not a punch back, like, you know. So, and then it's like, see, and then we prove our point. The world is dangerous. See what it does to me. We never realize we're the ones going around with our fist out. And rescuers also, like I said, have a belief, and that is that their needs are not that important, that they are here to take care of others. And so they know what everyone else needs. But when you ask a rescuer what you need, what do you need, they draw a blank. It's, I need to take care of whoever, my mother, my spouse, my children, my coworkers, whatever it is.
Yeah. Thank you for clarifying that. And you said it in such a clear way. It feels, I mean, that is the essence of what we are seeing in a lot of the narrative right now. In this particular snapshot of time, it's like we are just bouncing back and forth between those two things.
Well, one of the things that I came up with, and what I've done basically, I grew up with metaphysics as my background. So I was handed metaphysical law as a youngster from the age of 7 up, through my mother, and she through her mother. So I was third generation, and then my children and grandchildren now have grown up on these principles, and it's a very different way of seeing life. But when you see that these are universal laws that apply to all manifestation, this is how manifestation, it's how minds work, is what the guiding principles are. And what I began to experiment with many years ago was like, how do you get out of victim consciousness? How do you do it on the ground? How do you move beyond it? What does moving beyond it look like? And I came up with the Trinity as that's the go-to place. So if you take that downward facing triangle, which is the shadow side of living out of a defensive structure that says I'm at the mercy of life, that or there is a upward facing triangle that holds the seed of who you really are, who we each really are. It's our divine design. And we are each encoded with it, so says metaphysics, that we each come in carrying, just like the acorn is the seed for the oak tree. You will never have a rose bush come out of an acorn or any other. It will only be an oak tree. It can only be that. And each and every one of us have that code. And there are ways of recognizing it. And when we line up with the universal laws, that is the way to ignite and open and help us remember who we came to be. So that's what the guiding principles do. And so I began to experiment many years ago with just how do you apply those on the ground? How do you use universal laws that otherwise sound like beautiful pablum? You know, it's beautiful words, but I don't know how, I can't relate. How do you bring that down to life? And that has been the research I've been doing with people on the ground for 40 years. And so that has helped me understand that those 10 guiding principles they're the keys. You just pull it in. The first guiding principle says that there are no accidents. There's nothing that can happen. And that's because the second guiding principle is true, which is we are all vibration. We're all vibrational. Our minds we are receivers and transmitters. We are constantly receiving and expressing, transmitting electromagnetic messages in the form of our thoughts, which get transmitted through emotion. And so one of those guiding principles is actually what I call this process, and we call this principle the reality formula, because it's the actual formula for how the mind works. And let me just give that to you really quick, because it's the key to beginning to move out, to begin to understand that there are two minds. There is the victim mind that we are literally grow up in with our crazy systems, you know, starting with the family and the beliefs that we take on as children. We come in and we take that on, and that creates that victim consciousness. It creates that victim story that we live out of, and we just keep on perpetuating it through the triangle. This is how that works, until we began to remember, wake up to the code within us, which is the other mind. There's two minds: the lower mind, the ego, the victim mind, victim consciousness, the victim ego, I like to call it, or the higher mind, the true essential being, that part of you that you've always been, that is eternal and never forgets. And we have these two minds, and that's the law of duality. So we use these guiding principles to connect with that higher mind. We build a bridge between the victim mind and the higher mind, the divine design of who we are in reality. We begin to, and we call this an awakening process. And so we take those guiding principles. There's one that says the world is always mirroring to us our relationship between these two minds. Whatever I attract into my life, it's going to be an attraction, because we are electromagnetic, and we're going to draw to us the vibe. And I forgot to tell you what the reality formula is. It says, when you believe what you think, two things happen automatically. The first is that you begin to feel the feelings that go with that thought. If I think the world is dangerous, then I'll feel all the feelings that go with that. I'll feel paranoid, distrustful, resentful, cautious, hypervigilant. These will, and then the second thing that happens, I'll feel the feelings that go with that thought. And that is the transmission. That's the emotion, energy in motion that we send out. And that vibe also affects the way we react. So we will feel as if it's true, and we will begin to act as if what we believe is true. We feel it. Now we react out of it. We're reacting as if it's true. If I believe that the world is dangerous, I'm going to start being defensive. And I'm going to start thinking I need to, back on the triangle, I need to either kill you, save you, or give up to you, collapse, And so so those principles helping us understand that, oh, whatever I'm experiencing out here is actually mirroring to me my beliefs about my own inner being and where I am with and how I see myself, for the purpose of transforming my own mind so that I can move beyond a sense of feeling victim and find instead an inner sense of connection, remembering.
Yeah, so many people are looking for that inner sense of connection right now when they're looking outward and seeing all of the things that are kind of playing out
So true.
in this moment of time.
Yeah. And there, so the law of polarity is one of the universal principles. And it says that it's the yin yang. It's the dark and the light. If you draw the circle, and then you've got the light and you've got the dark, and you've got the little dot of the light, and because if you go far enough, says the medical physical law, if you go far enough into the dark, you will find the light. And you can only, and these two, you can't remove one from the circle and have wholeness. You can't take the dark out and have wholeness. It's two halves. And actually, so if you look at it in terms of these two minds, we have a higher mind that is made of light, that never falls for the lie of a dangerous world, knows that the world is totally manifested in terms of it's always about what we see out here is a projection of what it is we believe. And what we see happening in the world right now are those two halves kind of coming at each other, And this is part of the transformation process. This is what happens in us. It's through recognizing the contrast in us, the places where we are out of the light, out of alignment. It's through recognizing and making peace with that we begin to transform and shift our inner being. We come into a place of remembering that we are the both and that the contrast is what shows us, is what shows us where it is that we are asking to refine, to refrain, to forgive, the story or the lie that we are holding on to, what needs to be released. That is the purpose of shadow. And that is why it's so necessary in the process of awakening, of realization. Because how else am I going to know where it is I'm stuck? So what is the world mirroring to us right now? Well, it's mirroring to us how much fear there is. It's mirroring to us based on the belief that we're not safe and that the world is dangerous. It's showing us our collective mindset. It is a very, very widespread, popular idea, notion that the world is dangerous, because we don't understand that what I encounter personally on my path is going to be a relevant match to my belief system. And this is something I've been experimenting with for many, many years in my own life, and teaching to others and watching them experiment in theirs. And I will tell you, I have never found it not to be true. And it's the work I do with people every day. Is help them connect with what is this out here that I'm resisting. So, because it's resistance is a key, by the way. That's how you know it's in you, is if you resist it in something else or in someone else. So the things you hate in others, the side you hate, whichever, we like to think of ourselves as always in the light, the other's always in the dark, and but whatever I'm resisting is going to be the part of me that's asking to be recognized, seen, forgiven, transformed.
Yeah. And I think people are coming up against that a lot and don't know what to do with it, instead of, some people do, but it's like, I like to look at it like sandpaper. You step against something and it's resisting, it's a little like abrasive and harsh, and it doesn't quite feel good. But as you get to make friends with it, it kind of softens and, polishes you in a way too.
It's so true. And it is part of the design. It's like the grit in the oyster that makes the pearl.
Yeah.
This is exactly what contrast is for. And this is a phenomenal moment on our planet, when, as designed to happen, this is not like this shouldn't be happening. That's victim vocabulary. When we say, well, it shouldn't be, well, is it? That's how we know it should be, because it is. And there are no accidents, there's no coincidence. And that doesn't necessarily mean we like it. It doesn't mean it's comfortable for us, but it does mean it's come as an awakener. It's come as more than that, as a transformative agent. And the chaos we're seeing in the world right now, that is, the old is being revealed and sloughed off, and there's a new that is burgeoning, and it's really up to us individually, how we tread this time, how we move through it. For me, I'm just using it as motivation and inspiration to continue to go, oh, anytime I feel a prick, anytime I'm resentful or resentment or resistant in any way, the next question I like to ask is, okay, so what is that mirroring to me? How am I in that kind of relationship with myself? What part of me is judgmental? What part of me, whatever it is I'm accusing others of, is usually a really good place to start looking for where it is we're out of balance with ourselves. How is it that I'm disapproving of me? How is it I don't give myself time? How is it I put myself down? How is it I see myself as whatever it is? I'm mad at them for holding the finger of blame. What am I blaming for what is going on in me? This is a path of 100% radical self-responsibility. It means taking responsibility for what it is that we encounter and attract into our lives. Not because we're bad. It never happens because we're bad or weak. It always comes as an opportunity to clear and cleanse and reframe and transform. And if we begin to see it that way, as grist for the mill, as fertilizer, amazing things happen.
Yeah. The self-responsibility piece is really big.
It really is. And that is the key, the number one characteristic of moving beyond victim consciousness, is that we put down blame. We stop blame. And we take responsibility. And because yes, it's we can see their part, and maybe we're right. but their part is not going to heal us. And we won't find peace by pointing out to them and pushing against how wrong they are. And we can't get miserable enough to make someone better. You know?
Yes, that's great. That's a little gold nugget right there.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, we can't fight enough to push it the other way. No, actually, when we push against, we become that which we pushed against. We become just like them. It's like the person who's defending with their fist out. So I'm doing the very thing that I'm accusing them of doing. And this is what I mean by the world is a mirror. And when we begin to look at it that way, oh my goodness, things begin to transform really fast. It's amazing how free self-responsibility allows us to be.
Yeah.
It brings freedom at an unprecedented level. There's just no better way. There is no other way to free ourselves. Yeah. We keep thinking if we can make them different, if we can make them stop doing that, if we can whatever force our idea of what is the right way. But as soon as we do that, we turn into all that we hate in them.
Yeah, right. And I believe you host a bi-monthly event that's all about self-responsibility, right?
Yes.
Or at least in part.
Yeah, no, it is all about it.
Okay.
I would say that's a safe thing to say. Reality Formula Live. Yeah, it's find out more about it at realityformula.com. Actually, if you go there, you'll find more. So realityformula.com. And yeah, my daughter and I do it. And my daughter also speaks this language and of course has worked with me for a long time, but also grew up with these principles as well. And so she's burgeoned into such a beautiful, blossomed into such a beautiful contribution to the work and her understanding of it. She's so grounded. So Jaquetta is her name. So the two of us share this work together and work live with people to help people actually look at their own life situation through the guiding principles. How can I transform the way I see this so that I can feel differently? Remember, it's how I see it that will determine how I feel about it. And then that determines how I react. And how I react determines what I bring back to me. And so how can I see this in a way that helps me to feel better so that I can respond more appropriately and in a more kind way, and thereby bring more kindness my way is really it.
Yeah. And that's how you consciously create your life.
That's exactly right. Yeah, we become collaborators and co-creators, which is what we're meant to be and do. That is what we're truly here, each and every one of us. That is our mission, our purpose, is to remember how to co-create. And the way we learn that is through contrast. We learn by creating. Actually, I'll give the victim ego soul credit, the king on the hill, for creating your life and anything that feels like resistance or creates fear or anger or any of the negatives, what we think of as negative responses from us. That's victim consciousness. What we can do with that is find ways to bring ourselves to peace, to bring ourselves to higher understanding, to move beyond, to see it in a way that allows us to make peace with it and transform it. Not a settling for. I'm not talking about just, you're just going to settle for the way that it is. Not that at all. It's very active, but it is about actively shifting, beginning to ask, instead of why did this happen to me, we ask, I wonder why this happened. What is it here to show me? We get curious about it instead of blaming and defended. Yeah. Very different way to go about life.
Yeah, much more empowered.
Yes, absolutely. You strike me as someone who lives that. You have an ambiance about you that's very peaceful, Clarissa.
Oh, I'm learning every day. Like everybody else.
Isn't that nice to know that you don't have to know? You can just be a student.
Yeah.
I tell people all the time, I don't know if you're getting anything out of this, but I'm learning a lot.
Yeah. Yeah. And when you're sharing it with other people, you really, that's where it sort of integrates and, you
That
know,
really, being a teacher is the best student of all. I
yeah.
mean,
Yeah.
yeah, that's why I teach, is because I learn from, and also the ideas that come in other people's response, it takes me into a further revelation or realization around whatever, I just can continue to grow. So teaching is a wonderful way. I think that's why so many of us aspire to be coaches. We know that the best way to learn this is to get out there and share it. And right now we're so needed. We're so needed, because we are that light. That is what we do, is we, as light workers, is we hold the vibration in a place of recognition and realization through self-responsibility, so that those who are seeking a better way, looking to feel better, really, that we sort of light up for them, and they reach for that, and then through our transmission to them, we receive what it is we're needing, because we're going to teach what we most need to learn.
Right.
So I'm going to attract the clients and students to me that are in best keeping with my frequency, in terms of what is up for me, what do I need to hear, what needs to come through here to them that is relevant for me.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. It's cyclical.
It is so, isn't it? Yeah, it
All
really is.
connected. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Well,
So I'm
go
delighted to
ahead.
be here on the planet doing this job at this time. And
Yeah.
thank you for this opportunity to talk about it.
Yeah. Thank you so much for excuse me, adding your voice. And I did want to mention your amazing free gift before we wrap this interview. I think it is something to do with the drama triangle and victim consciousness.
Yeah, I mentioned starting gate positions, and it's just a little something to help you. It's a tool to help you uh, um, ascertain what your starting gate position on the triangle might be.
Mhm.
Um, yeah, it's helpful in that way. And then just to begin to research, what does that mean? What are the beliefs that go with that as a starting gate position? When I see the world, I go from victim to rescuer, say, or victim into deeper into victim, or victim into persecutor. They're all victim. All three, these are the three faces of victim. There's no out from victim consciousness on that triangle.
Mhm.
And so the more we perpetuate it, we just continue to dance around it. But we can by reaching for guiding principles that are based in a higher frequency, they're based in truth, and a realization that the world is exactly what it needs to be to reflect to us our own state of consciousness. And that is the role it plays, and it is doing it perfectly right here and now on our planet. It is showing us and giving us the opportunity to make the shift to a higher consciousness, because that is what we're each being called to do. And we know what it is. It's come the gristle that comes into our life in the form of our dilemmas and challenges. Those are the things that we're being given the opportunity to reflect upon and find within us and transform, so that we can open even more to the love and light that is radiating even as I speak on us now.
Mm. So good. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Faith.
Yeah, we appreciate your wisdom and your voice here, which is a very pertinent conversation right now for the time that we're in. So
Well,
thank
thank
you
you
so
for
much for your
listening.
wisdom.
Thank you for listening and being interested.
And to the audience, don't forget to click the link to take you to Lynne's gift. I think it might really help a lot of you guys out there. And then hit reply to the email to let me know what resonated most with you today with my interview with Lynne. And of course, stay tuned for more interviews coming your way to help you remain sovereign and strong. And have a wonderful day.
And Claritha, send me a copy of your responses. I would love to see what people have to say.
Yeah,
I'd love to hear that. That'd be great. Thank you.
absolutely. We will do it all together.
Thank you. All right.
Thank you, everyone.
Bye.
Bye.